Okay, welcome to Q&A. We have 55 questions from all of you on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We will start with questions about my musical background. All right, question from Diamond. Who are some of your musical inspirations / role models? And similar question from Jordan. Who are your influences? Michael Jackson, huge influence on me when I was a kid. Bobby McFerrin, huge inspiration on the way I sing. He's largely responsible for the ad-lib singing style that I do, the lyricless kind of, scatting kind of thing. Really go check him out. He's the one who did Don't Worry, Be Happy. That's not necessarily a accurate representation of what he does as a whole, but go check him out. Johann Sebastian Bach, that was later in life. He totally shifted my perspective of how far melody could really be taken, and that's like my main thing. Melodic composition is what I kind of geek out over. And Mozart also got me really good as a kid. Fractal is an electronic artist. He transformed my idea of what was possible on the computer with music, that you could get out these incredibly elaborate and expressive ideas. Ronald Jenkins, an incredible keyboardist. He was just my favorite keyboard player of all time. The flow, the kind of melody he was going for, the way he would play was just unlike anything I'd ever seen. He was huge on YouTube back in like 2008. DNA Groove is a video game composer and just electronic artist, and you guys probably haven't heard of him, but he hugely influenced me as well. Ryan asks, what music did you grow up on, and what do you think of today's music and where it's going? Michael Jackson once again. I heard a lot of Phil Collins growing up. I love Phil Collins. My mom was huge still is on R&B, so she listened to a lot of Luther Vandross, Boyz II Men, Christina Aguilera, a lot of that kind of stuff. Hanson Brothers really got me, that MMMBop song primarily. Eiffel 65, Enya, Mozart, Linkin Park. What do I think of today's music and where it's going? So, I think the purpose of music, it's important to be clear about what the purpose of the kind of music we're kind of criticizing might be, or giving some judgment about. Today's pop music, I think, is largely about repetitive gratification. So being able to listen to a song and get immediately kind of hooked on it and want to hear it again. And I don't mean that with a negative connotation, or I don't mean what I'm about to say with a negative connotation, but it's a lot like I think what we're doing with fast food. Fast food is like the distillation of all of the things about food that our brains tell us we like: fat, sugar, salt, and just put into this bite-sized explosion so that you get everything you want all at once, and then you want it again and again and again. I think that popular music is sort of using that same kind of effect. There's even a book I read called The Addiction Formula, and it's all about how to write good pop music. I really do like pop music. I love a lot of the pop music I hear today, but I don't get as much enduring value out of it as I do a lot of other kinds of music and music from the past, even pop music from the past. I think pop music from the past hit me in a more impactful way and gave me more enduring value, I find, than a lot of the pop music I hear today, but I like it. So what's the purpose? The purpose of the music today is to get people instantly feeling good, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think I look for other qualities in a lot of the music I listen to. I don't really listen to a whole lot of music in general because I find myself just doing other things and writing my own music. And I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that I'm not as interested in a lot of what I hear, but I like it. I enjoy it when it comes on. Where it's going, I think it also still depends what kind of music we're talking about. If we're talking about pop music, I like the direction. I think it's getting increasingly melodic. They're focusing, 2017 I think took a really cool turn for that. Melody was at the forefront. 2018, he's got a lot of different stuff coming out of hip hop as well that I think is pretty cool. I think there's a lot of potential for where music can go. Because the technology is available to everyone now. Anybody can make music on their computer. As long as they have a computer, they can make high quality music. So that opens up the door for a lot of interesting new things to start happening. There are more subgenres of music than I've ever seen. So a lot of interesting stuff happening. I don't see what I necessarily want to see in music happening in my face. Like I have to look for it, and I don't tend to spend the time doing that. So it's rare that I come across music that I'm really excited about, but it happens. So for everything I want to see happen in music that I don't see happening is where I intend to bring my own value to the table and try to make that happen in my own music. So, Valet Beatbox asks, when and how did you find out that you were musically talented and had an ear for it? Well, I remember when I was about 5 years old walking to the bus stop, I was hearing the Power Rangers theme, and I was walking to the beat of it, and I was able to identify the guitar part and segment that part out, and then I would sing it to my mom thinking it was the coolest thing, and you know, she was supportive. But yeah, so that's when I started. That's my earliest memory of having, you know, a musical ear. I didn't realize I had a strong musical ear in comparison to most other people around me until I was maybe 8 or so. I started realizing that I would be singing, I would be responding to certain structures in music, and a lot of other people were not responding that way. You know, I'd always be like making beats with my hands and stuff. So I started realizing I was about 8 that there was something unique about the way I was perceiving music in comparison to other people. Diamond asks, how old were you when you wrote your first song, and what was it about? I was about 8 years old, and the song was called Fun, and it had, the verses talked about a challenge I would experience with friends or family, some social challenge, and then my solution being retreating back to what made me happy, meaning like one of them was I'd be playing the drums, the other one was I'd be playing ping pong because we had a ping pong table back then. I had fun, I had lots and lots of fun, I had fun, I had lots and lots of fun, playing my drums day and night. Joshua asks, what instruments can you play? I used to play the trumpet. I was decent. I was getting fluid with the trumpet. That was high school, early high school. Dropped that. Always played the piano since I was a kid. I'd mess around. So the piano is the only one I'm really fluid at now. If I were to say what instruments can I play, I can play the hand drums. Like, you know, I don't know, you can see me play the congas here and there on Instagram. But yeah, the piano is the only thing I'd really say that I can play as far as instruments go. Cornico Alexander 89 asks, how long you teach beatbox? Your skill is amazing. I take it you mean how long have I been learning to beatbox? Because I don't really teach beatbox, though I'd love to teach people how to beatbox. It's just not something that I've had a lot of opportunity to do. Probably about 11 years that I've been beatboxing, but even before that, when I was really young, I would make little clicky sounds, you know, like stuff like that. So, you know, in terms of like really focusing on all the dynamics of beatbox, probably about 11 years now. Okay, Kernia Deraki asks, when did you think about making music using your mouth? Where did you get that motivation? Teddy asks a similar question, why do you like to make acapella? Namakao asks, what/who inspired you to start singing acapella? So, I'm gonna try to summarize this. It's kind of a complicated story. I always loved singing. I loved that guy Bobby McFerrin who sings that way that I tend to. I was an electronic producer for most of my musical journey as far as like taking music seriously. So I would make electronic sounds. I would make electronic music. I would never record my own voice. But I would sing ideas that I had in my head out, and I would try to capture the flow I was experiencing in my head using my voice. So I would record those on my phone and have those as jot notes, and I'd translate those into instrumental parts. One day my hands fell under this weird condition. I don't know what it is. I still deal with it. Tendonitis is the closest thing I can see that relates to it. I couldn't use a computer. I couldn't use a phone for about 4 or 5 months. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And I was lost because I really wanted to keep making music. So I decided to make a rig where I could control my computer using my feet and chin, and then I just started layering my voice instead of programming melodies. And so I just started making acapella music like that. So I saw the acapella market, and it looked like there was room for what I had to offer, because I didn't see anybody doing it in the way that I felt like I could bring it to the table, where there was a kind of soulful flow and vibe that I wanted to bring. It was an effective way for me to combine all my skills into something that I could kind of build a community around. So I was studying business, I was studying music business, how to grow a business, a music business online, and a lot of it has to do with picking a very clearly defined niche and reaching that community directly, and doing things like covers so that people could relate to what I was doing and get acquainted with my style, and then I could share my original music with them. So it all just kind of worked out that way. I was like, you know what, let's do it. I started putting out a couple videos. They weren't even a cappella. I was just like deciding to put out some kind of content regularly, and then I thought a cappella makes most sense. I can clearly define it, I can reach that audience, and yeah. Emma asks, were you professionally trained in singing? If not, what was your process to get so damn good? Well, I did a little bit of training when I was really young, when I was like between the ages of 8 and 11. Probably. I was in choirs, and I did a little bit of one-on-one vocal training. It was operatic training, so it was like, I would essentially sing the way an opera singer would sing, and apparently that is one of the most effective ways to develop. My dog is snoring. Hey, sorry. He might keep snoring. We might just have to deal with it. Yeah, I did training, operatic training. Apparently that's the best way to train the muscles of your voice, generally speaking. I don't know a lot about that. Yeah, I did some choir work. I wasn't super into it. I just wanted to do it because I liked singing. And yeah, I stopped after, age 13. I was probably done with the choir stuff altogether. A lot of the way I train now has to do with very clearly trying to articulate an intended kind of sound. So I'll be singing and I'll know what I'm going for, and I might hear that I'm not quite getting it. My vibrato might be a little off and not as like well articulated as I'd like, or I might feel that I'm pitchy when I make certain interval jumps. So I'll sit and I'll repeat those over and over again. Tonal expression, there's certain kind of tones that I try to get that I practice a lot, even when I'm recording. There's a lot of practice that I do there with stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of the way I focus on training has to do with getting in the zone and flowing, and then trying to get more accurate with certain intended sounds that I'm trying to make. That's just the sort of short form of that. I'd be happy to make a video about my training style if you guys are interested. Jordan asks, what age did you start pursuing music? I started producing music on the computer when I was 14. But it was sporadic. It was a little bit here and there. I'd like remake songs that I knew, and then I started making originals over the next couple of years. But it was like here and there. I'd have little binges where I'd make music and then I wouldn't. Pursuing it like more intentionally, age 20. 20 to 23 is like when things got real, and yeah, I've been going generally solidly since then. Some ups and downs. EFX, speaking of questions, what is your relationship / story with Tristan? This is another kind of long story. Fractal was a huge inspiration to me. Electronic artist. I, through a friend of his, got connected to him. I was making music trying to model myself after him, and he heard it, he liked it, we connected, we became really good friends. He's still one of my best friends to this day, and he wanted me to go meet him and his label out in Vancouver, a label called Monster Cat. Tristan fans will probably know about Monster Cat. I flew over to Vancouver. I didn't know much about Tristan at all at the time. He had that big song called Flight with Breakin', but I didn't know anything about him. Met him, I fell in love with the guy, and his production quality, I couldn't believe it. Like he one of the best electronic producers I've ever heard of, really, in my opinion. So I met him, I met Breakin', I met Haywire, I met Noise Storm, I met Rootkid, I met Resonate, GQ Going Quantum, all these guys at the Monster Cat headquarters. I spent about a month there. Tristan decided to fly me back for another month after he paid my way to come back, and I didn't have much money at the time. He took care of everything We had a great time together, and he's, I feel like he's going to be a lifelong friend since then. Bertha asks, do you have a band? I don't have a band, just me, my computer, and my many voices. Chipatzuva asks, do you do acapella duets, or are you strictly a one-man band? I'm open to doing duets. I haven't. Everything you've heard has just been me, but I have been talking to an acapella duet, a couple. They do a lot of Disney covers, and we're planning to potentially do some Disney work together, or at least a collaboration together. So that'll be a trio. Roy Beatbox asks, what's your vocal range? Generally speaking, C2 to C6. Scrubs41 asks, can you do riffs and runs? Not really. Like, I can sort of do it. Like, if I'm really in the zone, and I can sometimes get off on like a nice run, but like, I haven't trained at that. That's the thing. I haven't, like, my training doesn't really focus on working those kinds of muscles, so I can do little trills and things like that, but my strength is more around tone and interval jumping, like jumping from a low note to a high note as accurately as I can, and doing like arpeggiated riffs like that. But in terms of those like crazy R&B, up and down, left, right, quick riffs, that's not something I have a lot of experience with. Alto Key Music asks, what's your favorite song of all time? Crazy Cat Lady of 2018, what is your favorite song? That is such an unfair question. If I say something, it's not going to be accurate. How do you have a favorite song? Like, how do you have an all-time favorite song? There's so many songs that I love. But what I will say is that there is one song that I did say was one of the best songs of all time. I audibly said those words, and that was Guitar Sound by Ronald Jenkins. Go check it out. I don't know if you guys are into it. I know you guys like acapella, not necessarily instrumental music, but I'm sure a lot of you would be into it. If you like my style, go check him out. Guy is ridiculously amazing. Guitar Sound, Ronald Jenkins. Definitely one of the best songs of all time. I don't know if I'm ready to say my favorite of all time. It's the closest I can say, just off my head right now. Nabil Fortune 2002 asks, how to be a talented guy like you? I think this is an important question because it's important that we understand talent versus skill, and how to cultivate the talent that you have that could even be dormant inside you that you don't have an outlet for, because I believe we all have some innate strengths and aspects of who we are that can be very valuable to other people in the world if we can channel them effectively. So I think it's important that you identify what your strengths are, what aspects of you are sort of naturally there that you didn't even necessarily work for. They're just part of your personality. Like, that's what I believe talent is. It's some aspect of yourself that was sort of given to you either by your environment or by you at an early age, or by your genetics. So your strengths that are innately part of who you are, it's important that you try to identify and connect with those, whether that is it doesn't have to be artistic. Like, my mom, for example, has this innate capacity to empathize with children and to be there for them before they even know that they need her to be there. She just senses what they need and takes care of everything for them in so many different ways. That's why she was an elementary school teacher. She made an amazing elementary school teacher, and she benefited a lot of people's lives, and that's her talent. That's one of her talents, to empathize with children. So identify the things that are unique to you, that come naturally for you, and we all have them. There are things that there are qualities you have that your friends don't have, and you might not be super aware of them because they might not be the traditional, like, I'm good at drawing, or I'm good at singing, or I'm a fast runner or something. But they're there. There are things within you, qualities within your personality that will benefit other people. So identifying your talents or your strengths and finding skills to help cultivate those is really important. And so let's say you want to be a musician and you don't feel like you have a natural talent for it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means that you might need to compensate for your lack of talent or your lack of innate sense for it with certain skills. You might need to train and help cultivate that. If you listen to music and it inspires you and it brings emotion within you and you really want to share that with the world, or you really want to connect with that part of yourself, that's probably more what's happening. You're hearing it, you're feeling that emotion, you want to go further into whatever that is. That's possible. In the same way that you're listening to the music, it triggers your emotion. You could be playing that music with the right skills and triggering that emotion and feeding back on yourself and going further and further with it. I believe that's possible. I've seen it happen in people. So just be clear. What are your strengths? And if you don't have those strengths, you still use the inspiration within you to cultivate a skill. But no matter what, you're going to need passion to push through and to repeat the process over and over and over and over again so that you can get that as good as you want to be at it. Like I had an innate skill for musical recognition. I had a musical sense, but all the stuff you guys see is all the product of years and years and years and years and years of skill acquisition, repetition. So identify your strengths, develop skills that help complement that, and it better be natural to you, or you better care a lot about it. That's what passion is, so that you can even have the chance to cultivate it. You might need to push start yourself. You might be in a rut. You might be hard to get going. That, I've been there a million times. So many people are like that. But if you're responding to true emotion and inspiration within you, it will definitely be worth it. It will feed back and it'll build momentum. So if you ever need any help with this kind of thing, I do offer one-on-one coaching. I offer one-on-one lessons. So I'd be happy to help you with channeling, whatever that is. So those three things are so important to be aware of how you're relating to them. Peter Dickey Lee asks, what genre do you actually specialize in? Beatbox, singing, rap, playing musical instruments? You are multi-talented, aren't you? So specializing, I can't say I specialize in beatboxing or singing or rapping, playing musical instruments. It's like, singing maybe, but if I were to say what's my specialty, like what have I really trained over the years, it's musical composition. Composing sound, musical ideas, whether it's through the keyboard or my voice or just composing it in my head. Melodic phrasing, song structure, composing musical ideas is what I'd say my specialty is. That's something I could teach. That's something I do teach. Singing, not necessarily something I have a lot of experience teaching, though I do feel like I could help somebody with it. Specialty would be musical composition. Dean Scenes asks, I've been singing for over 3 years and never had stage fright, but sometimes I think that I sound bad when I hear my voice on a recording. Do you have any tips that can help me get over that feeling? Man, I totally relate. I've been there. When I was 12 years old, the first time I heard myself on a professional recording, like I went to one of my choirs did a professional recording in a studio, and I heard my voice. I had a little solo. I heard my voice. I cried. Legit, I cried. I didn't want to listen to it. I was so upset. This happens to everybody, even with speaking voice. How many of you have heard yourself like on a video or something that a friend took, and you listen to it and you're like, that's not what I sound like. That sounds ridiculous. My voice sounds ridiculous. So many people think their voice sounds ridiculous to them or just sounds weird. First of all, it has to do with the fact that we hear ourselves differently in our heads physically. Like I'm inside, my ears are in here and my voice is in here, so I'm hearing it from here, whereas out there it sounds a bit different. So that can throw you off. Apparently Celine Dion can't even stand the sound of her own voice. Apparently, I was told this. She can't stand the sound of her own voice on recording. Like she has to leave the room when they're playing back her vocal recording. Another thing is, you might be comparing yourself to something that's very unrealistic. Like a lot of people are trying to sound like what they hear on the radio. They're subconsciously comparing themselves to that. Everything on the radio that you hear today is at least moderately, if not heavily, in most cases, heavily pitch corrected. That's why it sounds so good. That's why it sounds so clean. That's why there's not a single flat note or single sharp note anywhere across a pop song, because it's pitch corrected. And that's what you do. Acapella artists, we pitch correct our songs. That's how it's called tuning. Any producer you go to, they're going to tune your vocals. It's just part of the process of making a nice package of sound. We're past the point of being like, yo, you shouldn't pitch correct. It's not, people think there's either auto-tune on a song and there's no auto-tune on a song. It's not auto-tune most of the time. A lot of the time they're pitch correcting manually. They're hearing a flat note and they're correcting it. So you might be comparing yourself to something unrealistic. Also, you're a pretty new singer. Like you said, you've been singing for 3 years. It took me years before I stopped worrying about that, before it didn't sound bad to me. Also, I say most importantly, you said sometimes. You said sometimes you think you sound bad. Is it sometimes or is it all the time? If it's sometimes, that's important, because that means sometimes you like the way you sound, or sometimes you don't think it sounds that bad, and sometimes you think it sounds bad. That would mean there's probably a qualitative difference somewhere. Either your mood's different when you're listening to it, or your singing actually sounds different sometimes, and that can be due to a variety of factors. It might be you didn't warm up properly. It might be you're dehydrated. It might be you're just pretty flat that day. You might be nervous when you're singing. I know you said you don't usually have stage fright, but there's so many different factors that can contribute to the way you're singing, to your dynamic expression. These factors, you won't be necessarily that aware of them yet. If you've only been singing for 3 years, you won't necessarily know what those elements are that you're disliking. So I'd say, one of the best ways to go is if you can start recording on your own. Like, get your own microphone, start recording, listen to one recording, listen to another, listen to multiple takes. Like, if you guys hear my takes, sometimes, I'm taking 10 to 15 takes, and the first 3 sound totally different than the last one. And that's because I'm honing in on my intonation and the specifics of the dynamics that I want to hear. So, there's so many things that can affect how your voice sounds, and what's important is that you're conscious about what it is you like, what it is you don't like, and then you can make conscious decisions to try to correct those things. Keep the things you like and comb out the things you don't. So be conscious and give yourself time, be patient with yourself. Everyone deals with this. And also, if you get a song professionally produced, you're probably going to like the sound of your voice a lot better. It's going to be pitch corrected. It's going to be compressed. It's going to sound clean. So yeah, that's what I'd have to say about that for now. Feel free to message me if you're still struggling with that. All right, guys, that's the end of part 1. I think my video would be a bit too long if I included my answers to all 55 questions. So I decided to segment them out by subject. So next time we're going to cover questions about my process and my hardware and software. So I'll let you know when that's coming around. But yeah, I hope this was useful to you guys, and don't worry if I didn't get to yours yet. I have it, and I have some solid answers for you. So yeah, I'll see you next time on the Q&A.